Well, you see that for the last 1 year there has been ceasefire, but in spite of the ceasefire, the Israelis, whenever they think that the Hezbollahs are getting the arm, they always strike it. It is the same thing happening in Gaza also. In spite of the ceasefire in Gaza, Israel doesn't think twice before attacking in Gaza. They doesn't think twice before attacking Hezbollah in Lebanon, Syria border. So I think this is this disarmament of Hezbollah, which is taking place with the Lebanon government and the Lebanon army is trying to do. It is going to affect that because if the ceasefire is not being followed by any party, then it gives a mistrust in the mind of the other party that this is something a ruse that they are trying to project. And as a result of that, that disarmament exercise which is going in Lebanon of disarming the Hezbollah is going to suffer on that.
Right. And what political and security consequences could arise from Lebanon's army, that is not capable of protecting their efforts to disarm Hezbollah, and also their land, but also it accuses Israel of undermining the ceasefire?
Absolutely, absolutely, Asuma. Like Lebanon army is a professional army, and if they have been given a task to disarm the Hezbollah, and if the other party it's keep on striking Lebanon, so that the credibility of the Lebanon army goes down, and even the morale of the Lebanon army goes down. That is, they are doing the task of the Israelis. The disarmament of Hezbollah is in the favor of Israel. If they are doing favor to Israel by disarming Hezbollah, and in spite of that, if Israel is attacking Lebanon, so it not only gives a mistrust in the mind of the Hezbollah army, but it also demoralizes the army because then the people will think that the Lebanon army is not capable of defending its own people, defending its own land. So that is, I think, that is not the correct thing for the Israelis to do. If the ceasefire is there and your task is being done by Lebanon army, then let them do the task. And once they fail in that task, or if they say that we can't do it, then Israel should step in. Otherwise, before that, I don't think Israel should take any action.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that. How do you analyze the current capability of Lebanese army?
Lebanon army is a capable army, but only thing is if there is an insurgency, you see anywhere, wherever there is an insurgency or the terrorist organization like Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, so that there the problem is that the credibility or the efficiency of the army is affected because you are not very sure from where the firing is going to come from. You are fighting the enemy which you cannot see. So I think Lebanon army is a professional army, but like any other army which is facing the insurgency or the terrorism, so the task becomes all the more difficult. Asuma.
Right. And how do you analyze the capacity or capacity of Hezbollah right now? Is it becoming weak or is it still well supported by Iran?
No, after the fall of Bashar al-Assad in Syria, the supply chain from Iran to Hezbollah has been to large extent has been destabilized. And as a result of that, the arms are not coming at that number which they used to come earlier. That is number one. Number two, when this thing Hamas attacked Israel in October 23, after that Israel went all out against Hezbollah, and Hezbollah leadership, Hezbollah weaponry, Hezbollah's military capabilities all were reduced to almost zero. So I don't think that Hezbollah as of now is any formidable force because of first the Iran cannot support it as it was supporting earlier. Secondly, it has been badly beaten by the Israeli forces, including the airstrikes and other things. So Hezbollah as of now is not a very potent force.
And lastly, how do you analyze what's the strategy of Israel as Israel continues to breach the ceasefire that's formally in place, and also it continues to attack all these sites across Lebanon and Syria both?
Look, Israel is absolutely clear in their objective. Their objective is to finish off Hamas in Gaza and finish off Hezbollah in Lebanon. So that is their strategy, and they are working on it, and they have made it very clear to the even to the whole world that they are not going to tolerate this. And to achieve that objective, they will go to any extent to do whatever they feel is within their capability. So I think Israel is following what they have to do, and they will ensure that in future the incident like October 23 does not take place against Israel. So they are very clear this time. So I don't think they will allow, if there is any chance of this thing Hezbollah rearming itself or becoming stronger than before it becomes strong as it was earlier, Israel will keep on striking whether Lebanon army or the Lebanon government likes it or not. Asuma.
Thank you very much, Colonel Sirohi, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on, US President Donald Trump has said that he would like to bring together the leaders of Egypt and Ethiopia to work out a deal to solve a dispute over Ethiopia's Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which both Egypt and Sudan consider a serious threat to vital water supplies. Let's listen into what Trump has shared.
The dam that's been built in Ethiopia, it's one of the largest dams in the world, the largest dam in Africa, but it's one of the largest dams anywhere in the world. It was financed by the United States, and it basically blocks the Nile River. You know, when I think of Egypt, I think about the Nile more than any other place, in all fairness, but it goes through Ethiopia. And a dam was built, a very big one, very, very big one, massive. And it was something that should have been talked about a long time ago when they were building it or financing it. So I got involved at the end of my first term, and I was going to have a deal. We were going to have pretty close to a deal. Then we had a rigged election, and I left. And of course, Biden didn't do anything about it because he didn't know he was alive. And here I come back, and it's become a very dangerous issue, the dam. And I'll see if I can get that back on track. We were all set to make a deal. We're going to do a joint venture of sorts. And it would have been good. I think it would have been good for both.
Now we welcome back Colonel Sanjay Sirohi. He's joining us from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Colonel, for staying with us. Now, can you tell us how will this dam affect, both Egypt, Ethiopia, and even Sudan for their water supplies? And why is Ethiopia being inconsiderate about the neighboring countries for their water?
Look, the problem is, Asuma, that
Yes.
if you see that all over the world, the main problem which the world is going to face in the future will be water crisis. And you see anywhere, wherever the dams are being constructed, so the problem it affects the other countries also from where the rivers are flowing. Like in case of Ethiopia, Sudan, the Nile river starts from there and it ends in the Mediterranean Sea. And the dam which has been made on the Nile River. So whosoever country construct a dam on the Nile River, it affects the countries through which the water is flowing. So it is very, very important, and this has been a long dispute between the two countries. And I think Donald Trump has already said, like he made in his statement in his first term also, he tried to sort out this problem. Now, again, he's talking about that. So he will if he gets into involved, then I think the problem will be sorted out for the future.
Right.
Asuma.
So lastly, what do you think, what can these countries do with or without Trump for this crisis?
Look, the point is that if you see all over the world,
Yes.
Mr. Donald Trump has taken over as the United Nations, and he is everywhere. He thinks that he is the one who can sort out all the problems of the world. That is what he believes. And on the other hand, if you see the other problems, most of the problems are created by him now. So on the one hand, he is trying to bring peace in the countries. On the other hand, he himself is trying to bring war, whether it was Venezuela, whether it is a Greenland. Now he's talking about Diego Garcia. So This man is totally unpredictable. We cannot say what is the intention of his. Now, in calling leaders of Ethiopia and Egypt, what is his intention? Whether he will ask them to deposit $1 billion each for sorting out the problem. So, I think I am not very sure how he is going to sort out this problem, because this is a long-standing problem between the two countries, and it is also not mandatory for these two countries to agree to what Mr. Donald Trump says. United Nations is a different ball game, because it is the country it is the organization which is represented by 193 countries, and Mr. Donald Trump is the one who decides himself. So let us see how things move on. Asuma.
Yes, very interesting indeed. Thank you very much, Colonel Sirohi, for highlighting that and sharing that. Now we move on to our next news. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that United States remains the best place for investment in Davos. Trump has added that the U.S. economy is performing much stronger than expected with rapid growth and growing investor confidence. He has pointed out that big companies like Apple, Toyota are expanding their investments in the U.S. for proving the country's strong economic momentum. Trump has also highlighted that revenues from protective tariffs will keep increasing and showcasing his administration's trade policies that work. Trump has stated robotics will drive huge demand, but there may not be enough workers to fill the roles in new facilities being developed. Let's listen into what Trump has shared.
I do want to say the people in this room are amazing. Most of you were in the other room also. And the United States is doing really well, doing like nobody thought was actually possible, certainly not this soon. It's 1 year. It's exactly a year. If you think about it, time flies. It's 25%. That's a long clock. I think it's been reported by even people that aren't lovers of Donald Trump that it's been maybe the best first year for any president. I think in terms of what we've accomplished, it might very well be. But we've accomplished a lot, including ending 8 wars. I have 1 to go. I thought that was going to be one of the easiest ones, and it's turning out to be one of the tougher ones. But you heard me say before, 25,000, 30,000 people are dying a month. It's ridiculous. And I think we're getting close. Jared's here, and Steve Witkoff is here. And a lot of people that are working on that are here, and they've done a good job. I think it could have gone into a world where if we weren't here, it was out of control. But I think we're going to get it.
That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws, and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
Welcome back to NewsX World. I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching Focal Length. where we get you a briefing from topics from across the world. From Donald Trump floating ideas about acquiring Greenland to tough talk on Venezuela, questions are once again being raised about the direction of U.S. foreign policy. This uncertainty has implications for NATO's cohesion, the future of security partnerships like the Quad and AUKUS, and stability across the Indo-Pacific. At the same time, Japan is stepping up its strategic posture, China is adapting to an unpredictable Washington, and middle powers like India and Australia are being forced to reassess their strategic options. To discuss this, joining us now is Mr. Bryce Wakefield. He's the CEO of an Australian Institute of International Affairs and a visiting fellow at the Australian National University. He's a political scientist with expertise in international relations and East Asian affairs, and he has worked and lived and researched across the United States, Japan, Europe, and the Indo-Pacific region. Thank you very much, Mr. Bryce, for joining us on NewsX World.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. My first question to you is, Mr. Wakefield, with Donald Trump talking about acquiring Greenland and taking Venezuela's Maduro, how do you think this is stirring up uncertainty in U.S. foreign policy, and what could it mean for NATO's stability and unity?
Well, I think gone are the days when we rely on the rules-based international order, if those days were ever a reality, because a situation where we can have a president of one country ordering what is effectively the kidnap of another leader, whether or not that leader was legitimate, of another country, certainly signal that sovereignty is a concept that the United States no longer asserts the right to no longer respect. Greenland, I think, is distinguishable from Venezuela, though. I mean, the shock that Maduro's kidnap caused, it was shocking, but it was somewhat predictable, because it was laid out in Trump's national security strategy that the United States would intervene quite forcefully in the Western Hemisphere when necessary to secure its interests. With Greenland, however, it seems to be a kind of an egotistical project of Trump himself. The correct way to secure Greenland is actually to work within NATO, where among America's European allies there is actually significant capacity to operate in the Arctic. For example, Norwegian and Danish and Finnish troops are trained in those conditions, and they have common interests in deterring a Russian attack on Greenland or a Russian attack on the United States. So I think the way that Trump is behaving is actually harming American security by creating a rift within NATO, and you know, an attack on Greenland, which he hasn't ruled out, would mean the end of the alliance.
Thank you for highlighting that. And now looking ahead to the Quad alliance with the US, Australia, Japan, and India, what kind of challenges or opportunities might we see if there's a shift in US leadership and strategy under a Trump administration? As you know, you have rightfully mentioned that the current Trump administration's ways are harming American security.
Yeah, look, I think you can actually draw a distinction between the Western Hemisphere, Europe, and the Indo-Pacific. If you read the national security strategy, it's not quite business as usual in the Indo-Pacific for the United States, but they do point out, well, the strategy does point out certain important factors like the centrality of Taiwan to the geostrategic situation in our region. It doesn't mention Australia so much, but it actually does mention India quite a bit as an important interlocutor. Now, whether or not the United States can realize that vision with the way that Trump has played the bilateral India relationship, we'll see. But I think we can be a little bit more reassured in the Indo-Pacific that the traditional alliances are going to hold. I think we also have cards that we can play to a certain extent because Europe is somewhat wedged at the moment with the ongoing war in Ukraine. They are reliant on the US to provide for their security in a way that is much more pressing than it is in this region, at least for the moment.
Right. Thank you for highlighting that. And now moving back to AUKUS, on AUKUS, the pact between Australia, UK and US, how could a potential changes in US foreign policy priorities impact its rollout in the wider world of Indo-Pacific security partnerships?
So, yeah, as I alluded to, I think a lot of the partnerships that exist in our region are quite solid, with the exception of India. But certainly the traditional alliance relationships like that with Japan and that with Australia are on fairly solid footing. I haven't seen any indication that Trump is going to be anywhere as near as antagonistic towards Japan and certainly not Australia. With AUKUS, Trump has signaled that it is a priority for him. I don't know how much attention he pays to it. There is some grumbling within his ranks. There was supposed to be a review on AUKUS, and Australians were quite fearful that some of the people who were conducting this review, most notably Eldridge Colby in the Pentagon, would put some obstacles in place for broader cooperation with Australia. That hasn't turned out to be the case. When Trump met with our Prime Minister, he gave a very forceful indication that the US would deliver on AUKUS.
Right. Thank you for highlighting that. And now moving the shift towards Japan, over to East Asia, Japan seems to be ramping up its strategic posture amid growing tensions with China, like boosting its military and alliances. What could this mean for security in the broader Indo-Pacific?
I don't know if I would quite categorize it as ramping up per se. This is a process that has long been coming with Japan. One could trace it back even as early as the 1990s, that Japan has been questioning some of the post-war fundamentals of restrictions on its military throughout the last 3 decades. What has come into focus recently is something that happens from time to time, and that's friction between China and Japan over a war on words. Now, this time it's particularly harsh. The Japanese Prime Minister said that an attack on Taiwan would constitute an existence-threatening situation for Japan. That wording is very important because it relates to legal changes that happened in Japan around 2015 to loosen some of those restrictions. It is not something that the Prime Minister plucked out of thin air. Those legal changes in 2015 were contentious in Japan, but the Japanese military still remains beholden to public opinion. It's still beholden to civilian control to much more of an extent than, for example, the Chinese military. And the Prime Minister simply made those statements because it's official Japanese policy. So I think the reaction from China, which has been sustained and critical and harsh, there have been real actions taken, like cancelling flights for Chinese tourists inbound to Japan. These are an overreaction, and they're aimed at kind of painting a picture of a Japan where there is a continuum between today's Japan and Japan's World War II aggression. And I don't think that's fair to Japan. I think it's an overreaction. I frankly think it's a bit ridiculous on the part of China.
That's so insightful. I agree with you. Thank you for highlighting it and laying out that for us. Now, what might the US be rethinking, or how might be rethinking its global role, especially in Asia? And what would it look like for countries like India and Australia in terms of their own strategic independence and influence in the region?
Yeah, I think it's instrumental here actually to listen to a speech just given by the Canadian Prime Minister. The Canadian Prime Minister has outlined a world in which the so-called rules-based international order holds less currency, and countries in Europe and Canada and elsewhere are going to have to build flexible coalitions whose membership will always depend on the issue at hand. So issue by issue, different countries or different groups of countries will attempt to solve international problems. We, India and Australia, and to some extent Japan, in the Indo-Pacific, we've been doing this for some time through various multilateral arrangements like the Quad, like AUKUS, like the various trilateral agreements, such as the one between the US, Australia, and Japan, and many arrangements that don't involve the United States at all. Like, for example, there's a very fruitful relationship between France, Australia, and India, and another one between France, Australia, and New Zealand to operate in the Indian and Pacific Oceans, respectively. So I think we're going to see more of that. I think we're going to see. And we certainly see that in Australian foreign policy with approaches to Southeast Asia and the South Pacific in particular. We're going to see much more sort of ad hoc arrangements based around specific issues, and this is going to be something that the Canadians and to some extent the Europeans are going to need to have to get used to. I think, frankly, that we're already there.
Right. And then, you highlighted earlier that some Australians before Trump and Albanese's meeting, they were skeptical or fearful about Trump's approach towards Australia. So in this increasingly divided global landscape, how can middle powers like Australia, India play it smart, hedging their options, teaming up with the US or engaging with China and using multilateral groups to protect their own interests?
Yeah, I think that I have just outlined, and I think that's a big part of the approach that Australia is taking to its region, and at the moment, and it's an approach, if I'm not mistaken, that India has always kind of progressed. So India's multi-directional foreign policy has always been predicated on the notion that it might cooperate with anyone. I think Australia tends to be, if I may say so, a little bit more discerning about the relationships that it builds. They have to actually have real intent behind them to solve a particular issue in most cases. It's no good simply viewing minilateral arrangements as just another kind of box to check. So I think if I was to give any advice, I would say that yes, we do need to build more of these flexible, interest-based coalitions. However, it shouldn't simply be a bumper sticker kind of exercise. We're in the BRICS because it's a club and we like to join clubs. We shouldn't really approach it like that.
China reacting to Trump's unpredictability, things like shifting alliances or trade moves, and what kind of ripple effects could that have on stability across the Indo-Pacific?
Yeah, I think, look, there's lots of opportunity for China here. China will continue to support its now junior partner, Russia, because in the context of the Ukraine war, that war weakens Russia and draws it ever further into the Chinese orbit. So that's a concern for us globally, I think. I think the camp that has said that China's reaction, or that the kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro will signal to China that it is now okay not to not to pay attention to international law. I think they generally overstate that. Actors like Russia and China have really never respected what others have referred to as the rules-based international order, or even international law for that matter. There are a lot of examples that I can cite where they have overstepped their bounds, and they continue to push at things like the sovereign territory of their maritime neighbors. So the notion that China will be looking at what's going on with the United States and saying that this now gives us license to behave badly, I think is wrong. I think what it actually does signal, if we forget about Greenland, which is a bit of Trump's craziness, but I think certainly Venezuela signals that the United States is quite serious about its national security strategy. And they would be looking at that very carefully and thinking, well, I mean, there have been pretty clear signals that the United States won't tolerate aggression in the Indo-Pacific.
Great deep insight. Thank you for sharing that with us, Mr. Bryce Wakefield.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we would like to thank Mr. Bryce Wakefield for joining us and sharing your insights on focal length. It's a wrap on this episode of The Focal Length. For more international news and updates, stay tuned on NewsX World.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws, and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. US President Donald Trump steps back from threats to use tariffs or force over Greenland, saying a deal with Denmark is possible. NATO Chief Mark Rutte says Greenland's sovereignty is not discussed with Trump, focusing instead on Arctic security.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected. What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
Hello and welcome. You're watching Trending Tech on NewsX World, where we bring you the latest tech breakthroughs and trends from around the world. Photobiomodulation is a cutting-edge light-based therapy that uses specific wavelengths of light to stimulate cells and promote healing within the body. This therapy works at a molecular level, interacting with cellular structures to improve mitochondrial function, reduce inflammation, and encourage tissue repair. It has shown great promise in treating a variety of conditions, including Parkinson's disease, traumatic brain injury, and kidney disease by targeting the underlying biological processes that drive these disorders. The therapy can also have a positive impact on the gut microbiome, further enhancing its healing properties. As research advances, photobiomodulation has the potential to revolutionize the medicine, providing a non-invasive and effective treatment option for a range of neurodegenerative and chronic conditions that have been difficult to treat with traditional methods. To talk about this, we welcome Ms. Ann Liebert. She's a professor of research at Shepherd University, West Virginia, a research fellow at the Kolling Institute, University of Sydney, as well as coordinator of photomolecular research at Sydney Adventist Hospital. She's a vice president of the Australian Medical Photobiomodulation Association and the board of the PBM Foundation. She is conducting translational clinical trials in Parkinson's disease, TBI, and kidney disease, and experimental research into the mechanisms of photobiomodulation. Thank you very much, Dr. Liebert, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, Dr. Liebert, could you explain to our viewers what photobiomodulation is and how this light-based therapy works at a cellular level to potentially treat various diseases?
Thank you very much for the question. So light-based therapy, termed photobiomodulation, is the use of light that doesn't heat, unlike surgical light treatment that is used for cutting and cauterizing. It works at a cellular level to activate the energy-producing part of the cell, which is called the mitochondria, to increase energy availability for cellular functions. This energy is then used for tissue healing, relieving pain, and increasing nervous system activity to improve brain and nervous system functions. And this is especially important where there has been trauma, infection, viruses, metabolic imbalances causing symptoms of disease. These include pain, muscle tightness, and cognitive loss. It stimulates the cell when there is inflammation that is not resolving, and it suppresses inflammation where there is inflammation in diseases such as chronic pain and Parkinson's disease.
In your photomolecular research, What have been the most surprising discoveries about how light interacts with molecules in the body, and how does this lay the foundation for new medical treatments?
So the most exciting, surprising discovery that we found is that more than 10 years ago, when I was working at Sydney University in the lab with some professors, Professor Stone and Mitrofanis, who were working on relieving Parkinson's disease in an animal model. So what they found was when they blocked out the eyes and only did the treatment on the abdomen, there was as much relief of the Parkinson's as treating directly the brain. So my husband, who's a microbiologist, Dr. Brian Bicknell, he said at the time, I think, Anne, what you're doing is treating the microbiome. So very surprisingly, we did the experiments again. We put the light on first, and then we did the experiments just on the abdomen. At the same time, he measured the microbiome to see when the mice got better, was it the microbiome that changed at the same time? And it was. We published this, and this was very surprising to us. And that's when we started to look at the mechanism, as part of the mechanism of the microbiome being an action of the light.
Your work on photobiomodulation for Parkinson's disease has shown promising results, including changes in the gut microbiome. Can you share how this therapy might improve symptoms for patients living with these conditions?
So we have now completed 4 clinical trials using photobiomodulation in people for Parkinson's disease, as well as the fact that I've been using the treatment for many years in my clinic as a clinician. What we have found over both of these times is that the symptoms have improved and sustained for more than 5 years in a large percentage of the patients. The symptoms that we have seen improvement have been motor symptoms like mobility, walking and balance, as well as fine motor skills such as writing. And more importantly, we've also seen improvement in Parkinson's disease in non-motor symptoms like improved cognition, improved sleeping, improved quality of life, and in the improvement in the sense of smell. This is particularly encouraging for us because there is no other treatment that so far that has been able to help regain the sense of smell. And losing the sense of smell can be one of the very early indications of Parkinson's symptoms, preceding the other symptoms for many years. And so we see these treatment as potentially having new improvements and sustained improvements in Parkinson's disease. And we've also seen that there is a possibility that is the microbiome that is driving this. And over the new year, we have just published a paper describing the changes in the microbiome in our patients that improved all these symptoms.
For individuals suffering from traumatic brain injury, how does photobiomodulation address inflammation and recovery based on your clinical trials?
So photobiomodulation is very good at resolving inflammation and neuroinflammation. There have been a number of studies on traumatic brain injury and post-concussion injury and post-traumatic injury that have been reported. And they often, these conditions can lead on to something called chronic traumatic encephalopathy and also Parkinson's disease. The important thing with traumatic brain injury, and this is my clinical experience as well as other studies, that if you address the traumatic brain injury early with photobiomodulation to the area of head and traumatic neck, then you can resolve the symptoms and don't have some chronic neuroinflammation that will prevent this condition going on to more permanent brain loss. Interestingly, 40% of people that are homeless in America have had a traumatic brain injury. So it's very important, whether the injury is happening in sport or trauma or car accidents or blast injuries, that you resolve the treatment using the symptoms using photobiomodulation early on to prevent the chronic inflammation that leads to more serious illness.
Thank you for sharing that. And now bringing kidney disease into our conversation, what role does photobiomodulation play in suppressing oxidative stress and inflammation in chronic cases, and what outcomes have you observed in your research?
So in our kidney research, and have to say that we have not started any clinical trials. We hope to in this new year. But in our, so far, our preclinical trials, we have seen there has been a reduction using photobiomodulation at the right level over the kidneys in oxidative stress markers and inflammation. And in end-stage kidney disease, there's often a lot of scarring and fibrosis, and we were able to demonstrate now in both in a single-cell model and in a clinical model with mice that's been repeated, that the chronic inflammation and fibrosis was reversed, and as it was reversed, the markers for improvement in decreasing oxidative stress, improving antioxidant markers, and in improving the upregulation of genes that help in collagen and in the cytoskeleton, which is the wrapping of the cells, were all increased. And this was sustained over time, and these results are so encouraging for us that we're going to start this with a human trial, and then if this is successful, this will be able to be a very good adjunct treatment to help in the early stage kidney disease to prevent progression. That will be our aim.
How do you envision photobiomodulation evolving as a treatment option for neurodegenerative and chronic conditions like Parkinson's, TBI, and kidney disease on a global scale?
That's a very interesting question. I think we're at an inflection point right now for treating these diseases. Current treatments haven't worked for these diseases, and we are seeing very good results with light therapy. We see light therapy as potentially a universal treatment that patients can administer themselves in their own homes and take control of their own treatment with good effects. In the same way that international guidelines for using photobiomodulation for the reduction of side effects of cancer treatment, I anticipate that there will be development of guidelines for treatment for chronic conditions such as kidney disease, neurodegenerative diseases such as Parkinson's as well. And the evidence is now increasingly that we should be able to implement these global guidelines, and in the future, other chronic conditions like kidney disease and other metabolic conditions, we will be able to implement the same treatment guidelines when the evidence exists.
Thank you, Ms. Anne Liebert, for joining us on this episode of The Trending Tech. With that, it's a wrap on this episode of The Trending Tech. For more tech updates and innovations, stay tuned on NewsX World.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with U.S. a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with U.S. a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
what we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
in the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reforms, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump steps back from threats to use tariffs or force over Greenland, saying a deal with Denmark is possible. NATO chief Mark Rutte says Greenland's sovereignty is not discussed, with Trump focusing instead on Arctic security. Denmark's foreign minister says US President Donald Trump has sent positive signals by ruling out military action over Greenland. Trump also says he has a framework deal and drops tariff threats after talks with NATO chief Mark Rutte. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he will meet US envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner to discuss the war in Ukraine and frozen Russian assets. US President Donald Trump is also set to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Davos. 7 countries, including Saudi Arabia, Turkey and Egypt, say they will join US President Donald Trump's Board of Peace alongside Israel. Trump says Russia's Vladimir Putin has also accepted, but Moscow says it is still reviewing the invitation. Syria's government accuses the Kurdish-led SDF of attacks that kill 11 soldiers, but the group disputes the claims and blames at least one blast on Syrian troops. The incidents risk derailing a 4-day ceasefire as Damascus pushes for the SDF to integrate into the state. The Trump administration starts immigration enforcement raids in a Maine called Operation Catch of the Day, the Homeland Security Department confirms. A spokesperson suggests targeted Maine response to a political feud with Democratic Governor Janet Mills over sanctuary policing. Nigerian forces rescued 62 hostages from the Manhei forest, a hideout linked to bandit leader Kachala Alti, as the UN says insurgency by Boko Haram and ISWAP has killed about 35,000 people. Meanwhile, in a separate operation, 5 soldiers and a police officer were killed in a terrorist ambush. According to Norwegian Development Minister Asmund Okrust, Jordan and Norway are deepening a strategic partnership that now goes beyond aid to include political alignment, economic cooperation, support for multilateralism, and coordinated positions on Palestine, international law, and UN reform. Alright, viewers, let's start with news now on the Board of Peace. US President Donald Trump is set to formally announce the first charter of his Board of Peace, and that's Breaking news that we are bringing you. Board of Peace is a body for resolving international conflicts with a $1 billion price tag for permanent membership, as per Trump. The board, which Trump will launch in what has been billed as a signing ceremony in Davos, Switzerland, was originally conceived to oversee the rebuilding or the reconstruction of Gaza. But a draft of the charter does not appear to limit its role to the Palestinian territory. All right, joining me now in this discussion are Peter Baum, who's editor of the Weekly Blitz. He joins us from London. And I also have Yossi Kapurwasser, Israeli intelligence and security expert from Tel Aviv. I'd like to start my first question with Peter Baum. Peter, firstly, talk to us about your thoughts on the contentions that are being raised on Trump's Board of Peace. Some call it mini UN. Some have raised the concern of a $1 billion fee for permanent membership or membership beyond 3 years, and the very fact that Trump himself may not be in office as US president 3 years later.
Well, let's be clear about a couple of things. First of all, the initiative, the Board of Peace, started by Trump, excuse me, is the phase 2 after the supposed ceasefire in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Now, what the world knows is that where we were from October the 7th up until 2 years ago is a far cry from where we are now in terms of the number of rockets being fired, the number of hostilities, the number of deaths, the so-called famine, etc., etc., etc. So whatever you think of Donald Trump, he is the one person on the planet that has at least tried to achieve something.
Right.
And all we see in the Western media, who have this hatred towards Trump, the globalized left-wing media, is that Trump can do no right. He is pilloried, he is mocked, he is demonized by all the so-called globalists in the world. But at least he's trying to do something. Now, whether this Board of Peace achieves its objectives is yet to be seen. But the mere fact that this one man and his administration are trying to put into place some kind of formula, some kind of process that will ultimately end the hostilities between the Palestinians and the Israelis, I think should be applauded. And yet, where I come from, the United Kingdom, the media, the focus is purely on mocking him, and there is almost a willingness, an eagerness that they want to see this Board of Peace fail. The fact that he's doing something, and the fact that Saudi, Turkey, probably to Israel's distrust and dislike, and Egypt have signed up, I think should be applauded. And I think it's just exposes the political elite and the global media as to what they are. They just want to see Trump fail. They just want to mock him. They just want to demonize him. We don't know how many more countries are going to sign up. I understand that Vietnam has signed up. I think Azerbaijan has signed up. And I'm sure in the days and weeks ahead, other countries have signed up. I noticed that my own government, the UK government, are saying, hey, we're not ready for it yet. Our UK government is an irrelevance.
Yeah.
On the world stage, they are nowhere near the kind of country that we were a decade ago or even 2 decades ago. So whatever the Keir Starmer's government does, really, by the world at large, should be ignored. They are an irrelevance in this situation. We'll see whether other European countries signed up. I noticed that Hungary has signed up.
Yeah.
That's not unexpected because they are very pro-Trump.
Right.
So let's see what happens in the days.
Peter, how do you respond to the fact that UK has held off signing the Board of Peace, citing Putin? He says because Putin is the member, UK has held off signing. So how do you view the peace for Gaza being differentiated from peace over the Russia-Ukraine war?
I think this just exposes the UK's hypocrisy in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Don't forget, whilst calling politically for support for Ukraine, our own government were buying gas from Russia. So on the one hand, they're supporting the oppressor and supposedly supporting the oppressed. So please, the UK has lost all credibility on the world stage. This government in particular doesn't know what it's doing. So that's how I respond to it. It's a hopeless government, both supporting Ukraine during the war politically and by supporting Russia by buying energy from them. So really, they've lost credibility on the world stage. I think Trump realizes that.
All right, sure. Peter, thanks very much for joining us in this discussion with your opinion. Meanwhile, viewers, there's some breaking news details coming in. Let's spell those out for you. Britain says it will not sign up for now to US President's proposed Board of Peace. Foreign Secretary Cooper says the UK has been invited but will not be a signatory at Trump's ceremony in Davos. That, by the way, is being held as of now. Trump is taking part in Board of Peace Charter announcement. That is the breaking news that we are bringing you, viewers. Meanwhile, Cooper from UK told the media the proposal raises wider legal and political concerns. She pointed to fears over Russian President Vladimir Putin's possible involvement, saying there is no sign of commitment to peace in Ukraine. The board was initially pitched as a plan to help end the Gaza war and rebuild the territory. But the draft charter goes further, with critics warning it could replace some functions of the United Nations. Several countries, including Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt and Israel, say they will join. President Trump claims Vladimir Putin has accepted an invitation, though Moscow says it is still reviewing the offer. Cooper said the UK backs Trump's Gaza peace plan but will continue discussions with allies before committing. All right, I would now like to go across to Yossi Kapurwasser, Israeli intelligence and security expert, joining us from Tel Aviv. Mr. Kapurwasser, thank you very much for staying on with us. Firstly, how do you react to the developments coming in from UK over Putin's possible joining of the Board of Peace?
Well, I don't think that originally the idea of the Board of Peace was what it became now. But it's a new development that attracts the attention of every leader around the globe, because there is a reason to believe that what Trump has in mind is to change the world order a little bit. He's totally confused, frustrated with the world order that prevails right now, with the situation where all kinds of members of the United Nations have more impact on how things develop than the United States itself. So here he comes with a new body that would enable the United States, together with organizations and the states that want to see development toward peace, run the business. And that's what he has in mind. And I think this is going to be something different than what was envisaged in the beginning, where it was supposed to just deal with the situation in Gaza. The fact is that the situation in Gaza is still very complicated and fragile, because the ceasefire holds, but it's vulnerable.
All right, sure. Mr. Kapurwasser, do continue to stay on with us. I'd like to put my next question to Peter Baum. Peter, why do you think the fact that Trump has chosen the World Economic Forum, which he's visited for the first time in 6 years, as the opportune moment for the Board of Peace signing ceremony? All right, I'm told we have some network connection issues with Peter, but Mr. Kapurwasser, I'd like you to answer that question, please.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I was just asking, how do you make the fact that Trump has chosen the World Economic Forum to hold the signing ceremony for the Gaza Board of Peace, especially given the fact that it's the first time in 6 years he's visiting Davos for the forum?
Well, I would not put too much importance to the venue that he chose in order to hold this ceremony. It's less important. The ceremony is important by itself. The creation of the Board of Peace is important by itself. The background of the Davos World Forum, World Economic Forum, is less important in this respect. It's an opportunity where he has many heads of states appearing in the same location. So this is an opportunity for him to hold this ceremony.
All right, Sean, Mr. Kapawasser. In fact, there are some more developments that are coming in. China's foreign ministry has dismissed as accusations of its Arctic ambitions as groundless after NATO said negotiations over Greenland with the US were aimed at preventing Russia and China from getting a foothold in the Arctic region. This comes as NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said that he and US President Donald Trump had discussed how the transatlantic alliance should best defend the Arctic against Russia and China. Trump has repeatedly said he wanted to acquire Greenland, citing national security, though he has now ruled out using force and has suggested the deal was in sight to end the dispute over the Danish overseas territory.
中方一贯主张按照联合国宪章宗旨和原则处理国与国之间的关系。所谓的中国威胁毫无根据。中方反对无中生有，拿中国作为谋取私利的借口的做法。
All right, viewers. China calling out the Arctic ambition claims of Donald Trump as completely groundless. Foreign Ministry of China has completely dismissed these accusations after NATO said negotiations over Greenland with the US were aimed at preventing Russia and China from getting a foothold in the Arctic region. Remember, viewers, this is what Trump had cited as one of the reasons for his so-called need to acquire the autonomous territory of Greenland that's under Denmark as of now. And this, of course, is coming as NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said that he and Trump had discussed how the transatlantic alliance should best defend the Arctic against Russia and China. Trump, let's remind you viewers, has repeatedly said he wanted to acquire Greenland, citing national security. And in fact, at the World Economic Forum address at Davos yesterday, he said the US needs Greenland not just for its national security, but also for the security of the entire world. Though he has now ruled out using force and has suggested the deal was in sight to end the dispute over Greenland. So fresh details are coming in as far as Greenland is concerned. As of now, what's clear is that Trump has said that he will not use force over Greenland, but what is inside is a possible deal with NATO for Trump to have his control over the Arctic territory. Viewers, fresh details emerging. Let's take you through those one by one. As far as China is concerned, China, of course, has clearly ruled out Trump's claims and also the claims of the NATO chief, Mark Rutte. Rutte has said, meanwhile, specific negotiations on Greenland will continue between US, Denmark, and Greenland. He said the Arctic effort will not drain resources in support for Ukraine. That's a very important statement that's coming out to us from the NATO chief, who says that Arctic effort will not drain resources in support for Ukraine. He's also said that critical minerals exploitation was not discussed in his talks with Trump, and that he is sure non-Arctic NATO allies will want to contribute. It is now up to NATO commanders to work through details of extra security requirement. NATO's Rutte says first results of increased Arctic security will be visible in 2026. A timeline there, viewers, inside that he's been presented by NATO Chief Mark Rutte. He says first results of Arctic security will be visible next year in 2026. And these updates, let's remind you, are coming from Davos. Rutte says the framework deal with Trump will mean NATO allies will have to step up on Arctic security. And moving on, viewers, let's also tell you what Russian President Vladimir Putin is doing. He's in fact set to meet US Envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner in Moscow today to discuss a potential peace plan for Ukraine. This meeting follows President Trump's statement that a deal to end the war is reasonably close. Trump has been pushing for a resolution, but a final deal has yet to materialize. Putin will continue the dialogue on the Ukrainian conflict and the possibility of using frozen Russian assets as part of the negotiations. Despite ongoing talks, European powers remain concerned about the peace process and whether a US brokered deal will hold long term. Trump expressed confidence in reaching a deal, but warned that failure would be stupid, pointing to both Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Putin as key figures in the negotiation process. All right, viewers, details now on the peace over Ukraine. Putin set to meet US envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner in Moscow, as a US delegation will be heading to Moscow to discuss a potential peace plan for Ukraine. Now, joining me in this discussion is all right, viewers, I'm told our guest has not been able to join us, but for now, that's all the time that we have in this discussion and this episode of The World Report. Thanks for staying tuned to NewsX World.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. US President Donald Trump steps back from threats to use tariffs or force over Greenland, saying a deal with Denmark is possible. NATO Chief Mark Rutte says Greenland's sovereignty is not discussed with Trump, focusing instead on Arctic security. Denmark's foreign minister says US President Donald Trump has sent positive signals by ruling out military action over Greenland. Trump also says he has a framework deal and drops tariff threats after talks with NATO chief Mark Rutte. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he will meet US envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner to discuss the war in Ukraine and frozen Russian assets. US President Donald Trump is also set to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Davos. Seven countries, including Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt, say they will join US President Donald Trump's Board of Peace alongside Israel. Trump says Russia's Vladimir Putin has also accepted, but Moscow says it is still reviewing the invitation. Syria's government accuses the Kurdish-led SDF of attacks that killed 11 soldiers, but the group disputes the claims and blames at least one blast on Syrian troops. The incident risks derailing a 4-day ceasefire as Damascus pushes for the SDF to integrate into the state. The Trump administration starts immigration enforcement raids in Maine called Operation Catch of the Day. The Homeland Security Department confirms a spokesperson suggests targeting Maine responds to a political feud with Democratic Governor Janet Mills over sanctuary police. Venezuela's interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, has said that she's approaching talks with the United States without being afraid. The senior U.S. official confirms she will visit Washington soon for diplomatic discussions. Nigerian forces has rescued 62 hostages from the Munhai forest, a hideout linked to bandit leader Kacalla Alti. As the UN says, insurgency by Boko Haram and ISWAP has killed about 35,000 people. Meanwhile, in a separate operation, 5 soldiers and a police officer were killed in a terrorist ambush. Now we start this hour with in Davos. The US-EU trade deal is now on hold until further notice. European Parliament Chair Bernd Lange has announced that negotiations will suspend over concerns regarding sovereignty and the ongoing Greenland dispute. The deal, which was initially struck in July of 2025, had lowered US tariffs on European goods. However, senior European lawmakers have said that the deal is now unapprovable after President Trump threatened new tariffs over the Greenland issue. Trump has warned that if the US does not gain control of Greenland, countries including Denmark, Sweden, and Germany will face 10% tariffs starting on February 1st. Though after Trump's meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has announced on his Truth Social platform that he will no longer be moving forward with tariffs on European countries. However, it was not clear whether the US-EU trade is back in place or not. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Vijayjit Bhattacharya. He's an economist and finance expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhattacharya, for joining us again. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now looking at this, what do you think, what political factors led the European Parliament to suspend US-EU trade deal despite this apparent rollback? Or not very apparent, but do you think that they had to do something about the US tariff threats? That's why they did it.
You know, here's the bottom line, that trade leverage works only until it collides with sovereignty, and then it starts backfiring. So the trade agreement has been used as a leverage by the United States till they started impinging on European sovereignty by laying a claim on Greenland. And that really is a red line. So this is not just a trade pause, it's a trust rupture. And going back on it, it will not be very easy, because then the European Union would need a whole bunch of non-coercion safeguards, written assurances, and a clearer dispute resolution limits. So the deal is not going to be automatically back on track just because the United States has backtracked on its tariff threats, because also what is being seen in the last 1 year is that what the US says is not dependable. And we have seen that happening in its bombing of Iran, where it said that it's not going to bomb Iran. And then a week later, it went and promptly bombed Iran. So there is very little now trust in what the US is saying. And therefore, for the deal to come back from the European side, that there would be a need for written assurances, non-coercion safeguards, and also keep in mind that the deal has been now referred to the Supreme Court, which is almost like a bureaucratic sledgehammer, because then it will weave through the European Supreme Court and will take its own sweet time to come out. So these are some of the challenges that we see coming out, and it's almost reflective of what happened between Europe and the US in the early 1800s, before the 1812 war, where the United States cut off trade relationships more or less with continental Europe, especially France and Britain, and it immediately actually hit back the American economy, and subsequently it also hit the British and the French economy. So it's a repeat of that is what we are seeing, and I guess we're not learning much from what has happened in the past. Also, let's keep in mind that Greenland is not a bargaining chip for market access. So for Europe, this really crosses from trade policy into security and constitutional territory, and which is why the US response is much sharper than a regular normal tariff dispute. So till now, when it was seen as a normal tariff dispute, we had seen the heads of the European nations come down to the White House, have a conversation, have a discussion, but we are not seeing any more of that, and we are seeing very sharp rebukes at the Davos from the European leaders. So the red line has really shifted, and the tone of the conversation has really shifted. So the backtracking that was announced by the US administration is just a small step. I think much more needs to be done to repair the trust, the trust threat that has happened, or the lack of trust that has happened between Europe and the US. Much more needs to be done to fix that.
Right. So what are the immediate economic implications for if in case US-EU trade flows are suspended, and what if this goes on?
So it's going to be detrimental for the global economy for sure, because between the Europe and US, it's almost 10% of the global population, if not more, and it's about roughly 40% of the global economy that we're talking about. So any freezing of trade flows between these two economies is going to have an impact on the rest of the global economy. In the short term, we see both the US and Europe getting hit, because the first thing that the Europe will do is hit at the US farm exports, and that's a very sensitive part of the American economy. We've already seen that all major economies have been actually hitting the US agriculture, be it the Chinese who stopped buying American soya, to even India, and now we see Europe threatening to do exactly the same. So the US farm sector will take a massive hit in this particular case. And also we see that the tech sector in Europe will take a significant beating. What we also see is a reshuffle happening, because wherever the US steps out or US imports are stopped, the Chinese imports will start flowing in. So we see China being a great winner in the trade dispute between US and Europe, and which is why you will also see that the Chinese stocks are actually going up, while rest of the global stocks have been going down because of the new friction that has come up over Greenland. So it's going to be quite challenging, and there will be a reshuffling of global economic powers because of this particular rift that has happened. We're also slowly seeing a US versus a non-US economic shift globally. So earlier during the Cold War days, there was the Western powers and the communist economies. Now we are seeing a restructuring towards American economy and the rest of the world economy. So we are seeing a sharpening of that, and the rest of the world economy seems to be kind of revolving around Europe, the China and India. So that becomes the pillars of the non-American global economy that we are seeing is shaping up.
With that, I would like to thank Mr. Jayjit Bhattacharya for joining us and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. Putin has stated that Russia could contribute $1 billion from frozen assets to U.S. President Donald Trump's Board of Peace. He has also said that the funds would support the board's efforts to oversee global peace initiatives, including the Israel-Gaza ceasefire. Putin has also stated that Russia is currently examining the invitation to join the Board of Peace. He has mentioned that the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs is reviewing the proposal and consulting.
Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Turkey. The Special Envoy to the United States for the United Arab Emirates. The President of the Republic of Uzbekistan. The Prime Minister of Mongolia. Please welcome the Chairman of the Board of Peace, the President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Well, this is a very exciting day, long in the making, and many countries have just received their notice, and everybody wants to be a part of it, and we'll work with many others, including the United Nations. But I want to thank you all for being here. Yesterday we had an incredibly successful visit with many of the world's top business leaders, the best, the biggest, most successful, and foreign heads of state. And now we have one of the most important meetings of all, the official formation of what is known as the Board of Peace. I want to thank the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, and their extraordinary work. I mean, they've done an amazing job. We have peace in the Middle East. Nobody thought that was possible. We've settled 8 wars, and I believe another one's coming pretty soon. You know what that is? The one that I thought was going to be an easy one has turned out to be probably the most difficult. Last month, 29,000 people died, mostly soldiers, in Ukraine and Russia. Think of that, 29,000, 27,000 in the month before, 26,000 in the month before that. It's terrible. But we have meetings and we think we're making a lot of progress. Thanks as well to Secretary Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, and Chris Wright. U.S. Trade Representative, Jameson Greer. They're all doing such an incredible job. Ambassador Callista Gingrich, who is here, doing a fantastic, really fantastic work. Thank you, Callista. And many other members of my administration who are so committed to peace, and they're also committed to great success. Very importantly, let me recognize the very first group of distinguished members of the Board of Peace. They will be introduced by name in just a moment. Caroline will be doing that introduction. And to each and every one of you, we are truly honored by your presence today. Leaders of countries, in most cases, very popular leaders. Some cases, not so popular, but that's the way it goes in life. Thanks as well to President Karol Nawrocki of Poland, who's a fantastic man. He just won a very big election. I'm very proud of him. Amazing. Along with former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Tony Blair. Thank you, Tony, for being here. We appreciate it. And members of the Board of Peace Executive Board, great group. This week marks the one-year anniversary of my second inauguration as president. No administration in history has achieved such a sweeping turnaround in 12 months' time at home and abroad. We have a tremendous mandate. We won the popular vote by millions. We won every swing state to 7. They were saying, can you win all 7? Is it possible? Because it's not done. And we won all 7. We have a great mandate back at home. As I said yesterday, the U.S. economy is booming with virtually no inflation. It was 1.2% for the last 3 months. And we inherited the worst inflation in the history of our country. And we have economic growth now of 5.4%, looks like. And I think that number can double and triple if we do the right things. And if we change thinking so that if you announce good numbers, the markets go up, instead of if you announce good numbers, the market goes down, because everybody tries to kill it by lowering or raising interest rates depending on the situation. When America booms, the entire world booms. And we have secured commitments for over $18 trillion in new investment coming into our country, which is a record by many times over, not just by a little bit, by many times. There's no country ever in history that's gotten anywhere near that number. Slashed our trade deficit by 77%. This is in 1 year. Yesterday was 1 year. And signed historic trade deals with nations from all over the globe. Today, the world is richer, safer, and much more peaceful than it was just 1 year ago. We put out all those fires. A lot of people didn't know, including me, that some of those wars were going on. And some of them were going on for, in one case, 32 years, in another case, 35 years, and another one, 37 years. We were very happy to stop the war that had started with India and Pakistan, 2 nuclear nations. And I was very honored when the Prime Minister of Pakistan said President Trump saved 10 and maybe 20 million lives by getting that stopped just before bad things were going to happen. As president, I ended those 8 wars in 9 months, including Cambodia and Thailand. And by the way, many of the leaders are here. Kosovo and Serbia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda, Pakistan and India, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia. We're working on that right now. I met yesterday with a very good general and a very good leader of Egypt. We're working on a dam that was built which precludes the Nile River from getting water. It's a little tough situation, but we'll get that settled. I really had it just about settled in my first term, and then we had a rigged election. Took me out of commission for a little while, but here I am back. We'll get it settled. But it's a pretty tough situation. A dam was built, and the water doesn't come down to the Nile. When I think of Egypt, I think of the Nile, but I think of the Nile with water in it. Armenia and Azerbaijan, I mean, a lot of these leaders have become my friends. They become my friends. They're here. And of course, the war in Gaza, which is really coming to an end. We have little fires that we'll put out, but they're little. They were giant, massive fires, and now they're down to little fires, so we can put them out very easily. We have 59 countries that are involved in peace in the Middle East. Many of them not in the Middle East. They're near the Middle East, but they're not in the Middle East. And many have said that if Hamas doesn't do what they promised they would do, and I think they probably will, but they were born with rifles in their hands. They were literally born. The first day they had a rifle put into their hands, but they have to give up their weapons. And if they don't do that, it's going to be the end of them. But many countries have told me we want to go in and do it, and they really aren't countries that you traditionally think of as being involved in that. But that's the fire. Hezbollah in Lebanon, we have to do something about that. But these are, I call them remnants. They're small remnants compared to what it was before. It was massive, large, powerful countries fighting each other. In another great victory for the ultimate goal of peace in June, we obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity with we call it Operation Midnight Hammer. It was midnight, it was dark, no moon, and every single one of those bombs from the B-2 bombers hit the air shafts and went deep into the earth and totally obliterated everything that they were doing. They were 2 months away from having a nuclear weapon. Can't let that happen. And Iran does want to talk, and we'll talk. We've also hit ISIS in Syria, and very strongly, as you know. In my first administration, I took out al-Baghdadi, the founder of ISIS, and he was trying to start it up again because due to the tremendous talent of General Raisin Kane, as I call him, he wiped out ISIS in a period of 3 weeks in my first term. You know, we had a great first term, but the second term is, I think, blowing it away, actually. But we took out ISIS, and we had it was gone. But during the Biden administration, it formed again a little bit. We hit it very hard in Syria. And Syria, by the way, I spoke with the president, is making a lot of progress, tremendous progress, actually. We're very happy about that. We took off all sanctions, which gives them a chance to breathe. And he is working very, very hard, and I think he's going to put it all together. So many things are happening, many good things. Threats to Europe and America, the Middle East, and other places are really calming down. It's a lot different than it was just 1 year ago. Just 1 year ago, the world was actually on fire. A lot of people didn't know it. And in Nigeria, we're annihilating terrorists who are killing Christians. We've hit them very hard. They've killed thousands and thousands of Christians. What's that all about? Much of this unprecedented success is possible because I rebuilt our military in my first term, and now we're making it even stronger. We have a budget of over $1 trillion this year, and next year we're going to $1.5 trillion. Our country's never done better economically. We're taking in numbers that we've never taken in, not only the fact that the investment is at 18 trillion plus, but our jobs numbers, everything is, I think, maybe better than ever before. I think you're going to see and a lot of you are investing in our country. I think you're going to be extremely happy with your investments. I think you'll see numbers like you haven't seen before. I also secured commitments from virtually all NATO allies to increase their defense spending to 5% of GDP. Everybody but Spain. I don't know what's happening with Spain. Why would they not do that? They want a free ride, I guess, huh? Every country but Spain increased to 5%. I don't know why. We're going to have to talk to Spain. With America's renewed attention to security of the Western Hemisphere, I've stopped the invasion on our southern border and designated the drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And you probably saw that we've virtually stopped almost 100% all drugs coming in by water. Now we're going to stop them on land. The land is easy. The water is tough. But that's down now. I heard it just last night. It was 97, now it's 98.1%. And we're trying to figure out who are the 2% that are willing to get onto those boats. I don't think they watch television or the news. But we've taken out almost 100% of all of the drugs coming into the United States by water. And now we'll, I think, very easily stop them on land. That's the easy part. We wanted to wait till the other was taken care of. And earlier this month, thanks to the unrivaled skill, power, and might of the U.S. military, we have the most powerful military in the world by far. We captured the outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro, and the people of Venezuela are very happy about it. And we're having great relationships with the new leaders of Venezuela. The relationships have been good. We're opening up the country to our giant oil companies, and it's going very well. We've already taken out, think of this, 50 million barrels of oil, and a lot of that's going to go back to Venezuela. They'll do more income with us in a short period of time than they did in years, because as much oil as they have, and they have a lot, just about the most. After us, there's a couple of countries that are in that category, but we have the most, actually, and they're second between Venezuela and us. We have 62% of the world's oil, but they have very little production, so they'll have a lot of production. All the oil companies, we had meetings, you probably saw, all the oil companies want to go in. They want to go in immediately. They're already touring the sites. But our military was amazing. That strike was amazing. We had a second wave coming. We didn't need it. They said, no second wave. We don't want a second wave. The first wave was enough. And, of course, we're working to end the horrible killing in Ukraine, a war that should never have happened and would have never happened if I were president. That was not going to happen. I used to speak to Vladimir Putin about Ukraine, and it was the apple of his eye, but he would never have ever done it. Said, you can't do that, Vladimir. As part of this historic record of major peace initiatives, today we're announcing more details regarding the Board of Peace, so important. This board has the chance to be one of the most consequential bodies ever created, and it's my enormous honor to serve as its chairman. I was very honored when they asked me to do it. We had an idea to do it, and then they came, they said, you be the chairman. And but I take it very seriously. We have a great group of people and incredible young people that are leading it from within. It's running beautifully, started already. And every country, just about every country, wants to be a part of it. And we just sent out the letters a couple of days ago, and these are just the countries that are here. They happen to be in Davos. So we said, would be honored if you wanted to join us up on the stage. And it's really great. They're friends of mine, I think. Let me see. Yeah, every one of them is a friend of mine. A couple I like, a couple I don't like. No, I like, actually, this group, I like every single one of them. Can you believe it? Usually I have about 2 or 3 that I can't stand. Usually I have 2 or 3 that I don't like. I don't find them up here. I like every one of these people. No, they're great people. They're great leaders. And the Board of Peace is composed of leaders, the top leaders in the world, actually. Last October, we released a plan for the permanent end to the conflict in Gaza, and I'm pleased to say that our vision was unanimously adopted by the United Nations Security Council late last year. Under phase 1 of this plan, we have painstakingly maintained that Gaza, and we're going to have it very strongly, and it's what we have, maintained the Gaza ceasefire, delivered record levels of humanitarian aid. We've given aid, you used to hear all the people were starving and it was terrible. Now you don't hear that anymore. We've delivered record levels of humanitarian aid. I want to thank the United States, but I want to thank some of the countries that are sitting right up here, because they've sent great aid, aid also in the form of money, where we go out and purchase food, and you don't hear those stories anymore with people starving. And secured the release of all 20, we secured the release of all 20 living hostages. Now, I want to thank Steve Witkoff and Jared and everybody for working so hard. They worked so hard, but there were 20 remaining living hostages Now, we got hundreds out, but the last 20, I said, boy, that's going to be a tough one. I said that a year before, and it was a tough one, but we got them. Got all 20, every one of them. And we had also about 28 that were dead, but the parents wanted them just as though they were living, just as much. Some cases, it almost seemed more. It was amazing, actually, the love. But their boy had been killed. In just about all cases, young men. Their baby, their boy had been killed, and they wanted the body of the boy, and it looked like it couldn't be done. And with the exception of one, and we're close on the track of that, we've got them all, every single one of them, which is amazing. It's a rough job. That was a rough job. And I've been very clear that Hamas must return that last remaining deceased hostage as well, and that will be the full commitment. And then we get on to other things, and we're committed to ensuring Gaza is demilitarized, properly governed, and beautifully rebuilt. It's going to be a great plan, and that's where the border peace really started. And I think we can spread out to other things as we succeed with Gaza. We're going to be very successful in Gaza. It's going to be a great thing to watch, and we can do other things. We can do numerous other things. Once this border is completely formed, we can do pretty much whatever we want to do, and we'll do it in conjunction with the United Nations. You know, I've always said the United Nations has got tremendous potential, has not used it, but there's tremendous potential in the United Nations, and you have some great people at the United Nations, but so far it hasn't. You know, on the 8 wars that I ended, I never spoke to the United Nations about any of them. And you would think that I should have. You would think they could have done those 8 wars, but they couldn't have. And they tried, I guess, in some of them, but they didn't try hard enough. But there's tremendous potential with the United Nations. And I think the combination of the Board of Peace with the kind of people we have here, coupled with the United Nations, can be something very, very unique for the world. It's for the world. This isn't United States. This is for the world. As everyone can see today, the first steps toward a brighter day for the Middle East and a much safer future for the world are unfolding right before your very eyes. Together, we are in a position to have an incredible chance. I don't even call it a chance. I think it's going to happen. To end decades of suffering, stop generations of hatred and bloodshed, and forge a beautiful, everlasting, and glorious peace for that region and for the whole region of the world, because I'm calling the world a region. The world is a region. We're going to have peace in the world. And boy, would that be a great legacy for all of us. Everybody in this room is a star, or you wouldn't be here. There's a reason that you're here, and you're all stars. You're the biggest people, the most important people in the world, most powerful people in the world. And when you use that genius that you have, that very unusual, very inspired genius, when you use that for peace, the opposite of peace has no chance. So I just want to say it's tremendous to be with you, and I think this is something that we're doing that's very important. This is the most important. I was so looking forward to being here, and yesterday was a tremendous success. A lot of good things happened, but this was something that I really wanted to be here and do, and I could think of no better place because so many people were together. And now to bring the Board of Peace into full force, I ask Sheikh Isa of Bahrain and Foreign Minister Barita of Morocco to join me in signing and ratifying the Board of Peace Charter. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, viewers, that was US President Donald Trump officiating the ceremony for the Gaza Peace of Board. However, there were only 20 nations in attendance, and Donald Trump on your screens right now at the signing ceremony of the Gaza Board of Peace. Trump has made some important statements during his address, including the fact that the UN had tremendous potential, but it was ultimately Trump who has brokered 8 wars. Said at the ceremony that the goal of the Board of Peace will be the demilitarization in Gaza. Now, this is happening even as Zelensky has arrived at the World Economic Forum in Davos. As of now, Trump signed the documents formally establishing the Board of Peace. That ceremony being telecast from Davos, from the World Economic Forum, Trump signing Board of Peace Charter and launching Board of Peace that some fear might rival the United Nations. Donald Trump speaking at Davos to unveil his World of Peace, and those visuals are live from the World Economic Forum. Donald Trump meeting the heads of 20 nations who are joining his Board of Peace. What is in the framework? It's a part of the prospective deal that includes renegotiating the 1951 agreement that formalized US military presence there. Meanwhile, the Board of Peace will oversee Gaza's reconstruction and seek to resolve global conflicts. He will later meet Zelensky as well, according to some sources. Board of Peace ceremony was attended, however, by fewer than 20 nations, and crucial to note, no European allies are there in this Board of Peace, and none of US's traditional Western European allies. The nations that are represented on stage, they skewed heavily toward the Middle East and South Africa, with leaders from Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the UAE, Argentina and Paraguay among those attending. All right, leaders. Viktor Orban, Hungary's leader, signing. Leaders of Nepal and Indonesia also signing those documents. Hungary and Indonesia signing those details. The Board of Peace documents. Live visuals on your screens, viewers. All right, on stage you see leaders from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Argentina, Paraguay. Also are present Azerbaijan, Pakistan, Indonesia and Hungary. Viktor Orban was on your screens right now. Trump is also joined by Indonesia and Nepal leaders in the Board of Peace. Right now on air, the leaders of Kazakhstan and Jordan. Viewers, let me take you through the full list of nations present. They include leaders and representatives of Mongolia, Uzbekistan, the UAE, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Paraguay, Pakistan, Kosovo, Kazakhstan, Jordan, Indonesia, Hungary, Bulgaria, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Argentina, Morocco and Bahrain. All right, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan speaking with Donald Trump. Before that, he was holding a conversation with the leader from Kosovo. Trump speaking with Shehbaz Sharif as Pakistan joins the Board of Peace. Once again, viewers, let's take you through the countries that are on board Trump's Board of Peace. Include Mongolia, Uzbekistan, the UAE, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Paraguay, Pakistan, Kosovo, Kazakhstan, Jordan, Indonesia, Hungary, Bulgaria, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Argentina, Morocco, and Bahrain. No European member, no European ally of Donald Trump of the US is on board the board of peace for Gaza. So Europe and in the UK have both sent a clear message to Donald Trump. This, of course, over his threats to acquire Greenland. Leaders from different countries coming one by one to sign the charter of the board of peace. Qatar and Paraguay, leaders from Qatar and Paraguay signing the board of peace right now. Live visuals coming in, viewers, from World Economic Forum in Davos. No European allies at the ceremony. However, countries that have joined are mostly from either Latin America or the Middle East. On the screens right now, leaders of Saudi Arabia and Turkey signing the board of peace. Remember, viewers, Israel and Netanyahu had clearly indicated their discontentment over Turkey and Qatar joining the board of peace. A leader from Turkey right now signing the charter. Trump, meanwhile, has said he's truly honored by the presence of these leaders. The total number of attendees is fewer than roughly 35, which was predicted by a senior administration official earlier. And it did not include any Western European nations, some of whom have raised concerns over the idea of a board dedicated to peace that might involve adversaries like Russia, that's currently at war with their allies. On screen right now, leaders from UAE, leaders coming one by one to sign the Gaza peace of board. Uzbekistan and UAE leaders signing the charter right now. Visuals from the World Economic Forum Davos Board of Peace signing ceremony. Those who signed the charter include UAE, Qatar, Turkey, Pakistan, Indonesia, all right, this is a leader from Bulgaria signing the charter. All right, viewers, I correct myself, that's leader from Mongolia signing the Gaza peace of Board of Peace Charter. Let's take you through the countries that are part of the Board of Peace. Once again, on stage at the Davos Forum include leaders and representatives from Mongolia, Uzbekistan, the UAE, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Paraguay. All right, viewers, Trump there signing the final charter for the Gaza Board of Peace after all the member states have signed their inclusion in Trump's Board of Peace for Gaza's reconstruction. The members of President Trump's Board of Peace just took the stage at the Davos Forum.
If President Trump and all Board of Peace members could please take their seats in the front.
All right, joining me now in this discussion is Ali Mohammed Abushbak, who's the Middle East researcher from Cairo. I'm also joined in by Saul Sadka, political commentator from Tel Aviv. Let's go across to Saul first. Saul, Turkey has signed the Gaza Board of Peace, much to the disenchantment of Netanyahu. How do you view Turkey and Qatar on board?
Correct that Israel is disappointed that Turkey and Qatar have signed on to the Board of Peace. I would also notice Trump's framing of the Board of Peace has almost no reference to Gaza at all. It seems to be that Trump has shifted the Board of Peace issue to something much broader than Gaza itself. And who knows, there are even people that are suggesting that he would like to see this form the kind of basis of a rival to the United Nations, which, to be honest, as we look at the state of the United Nations today, captured as it is by enemies, essentially, of civilization, this might be a very good thing.
All right, viewers, Marco Rubio now giving the address after Donald Trump. Let's hear it.
Believe that it was doable and to pursue it with all of his heart. And he was in that capacity assisted by an extraordinary team, and I think both Jared and Steve deserve a tremendous amount of credit. Jared Kushner and Steve Woodcock for all the work they put in. And all of our partners here today. And now we have this Board of Peace, who I believe's possibilities are endless. Obviously with a focus first and foremost on making sure that this peace deal in Gaza becomes enduring. And I know this president has it as his highest priority and will give it everything he has to make sure that this is successful. I also want to acknowledge the extraordinary leaders that are here today. This is not just a board of peace, this is a board of action. Just like President Trump is a president of action. A lot of times people like to give speeches. I've been to many of these forums, and they're not useless, and they're not, they have utility in many cases. But oftentimes in international affairs, we often find ourselves at events where people are reading these scripted statements, these strongly worded letters that they put out, but no action, nothing happens. This is a group of leaders that are about action. And the President of the United States is a president of action, of getting things done. And today is the beginning of that, of a new era and a new stage that we think is so important as a model to the rest of the world of what is possible. And clearly the focus is right now on Gaza and making sure that the plan that's about to be presented to you here today, this vision for the future of Gaza, this vision for the future of the region, is not just possible and promising. It is our destiny if we put the time and the effort that it requires, as I know this board will do. But I also think it will serve as an example of what's possible in other parts of the world. Without losing focus on what's before us now, this is what's possible for other places and other conflicts that seem impossible to solve right now. So I want to, on behalf of the United States, on behalf of the team that worked so hard on this, thank every single one of the leaders that are here today and all of the countries that have committed to joining, and many others who are going to join. Others either are not in town today or they have to go through some procedure internally in their own country because of constitutional limitations. But others will join. Many want to be a part of this effort because it is going to be a successful effort. And you see it reflected here today among countries of different backgrounds from different parts of the world, majority Christian some, majority Muslim others, who've come together. In fact, former adversaries who have joined here as part of this Board of Peace. And all was possible, and I want to acknowledge this again, because of the vision and the drive of the President of the United States. So thank you all for joining us here today. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Secretary Rubio. Please, if you could now turn your attention to the screens for a video message from the head of the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, Dr. Ali Shaith.
Distinguished leaders, colleagues, and friends, it is an honor to be here today. I want to start by thanking President Donald J. Trump and his administration for their intensive efforts to advance peace in the whole region. I also thank Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Qatar, and Turkey as mediators, the Palestinian Authority, and members of the United Nations Security Council for welcoming the comprehensive peace plan. These efforts created the opportunity for a new future in Gaza Strip. But what will really matter is what comes next. This transition will succeed only if it delivers real, tangible improvements in daily life for Gazans as Chief Commissioner of the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, it's my responsibility to turn this moment into action, to restore order, to rebuild institutions, and to create a future for the people of Gaza defined by opportunity and dignity, under the principle of one authority, one law, and one weapon. As a first step, I am pleased to announce the Rafah crossing will open next week in both directions. For Palestinians in Gaza, Rafah is more than a gate. It is a lifeline and symbol of opportunity. Opening Rafah signals that Gaza is no longer closed to the future and to the war. I want to be clear, there is much more work ahead, and none of it is easy. The road forward will involve difficult decisions and setbacks, but this is a real step, and it marks a new direction. Now, I would like to address the people of Gaza. من أرض الكنانة أتوجه الآن بكلمتي إلى أبناء شعبنا الصامد الصابر في قطاع غزة. لقد صمدتم وحافظتم على أسركم وأرضكم خلال سنوات عصيبة هجاف صبرت أعماقكم وكل الحدود. إن صمودكم الأسطوري له أعظم ما قدمت غزة، وهو الأساس الذي سنبني عليه سويا مستقبلنا. إن هذه اللحظة ليست للنظر إلى الخلف، بل المضي قدما نحو مستقبل زاهر مشرق، مستقبل ينشأ فيه أبناؤنا بلا خوف وقلق، يكافأ العمل وتفتح المدارس وتستعيد الحياة اليومية استقرارها وأمنها. إن المرحلة المقبلة تتطلب تضافر الجهود من قبل الجميع، ولكنكم لن تواجهوها وحدكم. أصواتكم لها وزن، وأعمالكم لها أثرها، والتزامكم بالسلام وإعادة بناء مجتمعاتكم ستحدد ملامح قطاع غزة الجديد. خطوة بخطوة وبالانضباط والعزيمة سنبني غزة قادرة على الاعتماد على ذاتها، ونرسم مكانها كمركز للحرية.
All right, viewers, we are now joined in by our guests, Ali Mohammed Abushbak and by Sol Sadka. Let's start with Ali. Ali, thanks very much for joining me. Firstly, how do you see that none of the Western European allies of Donald Trump are on board? In fact, not many really from Europe, with the exception of Hungary there in the board of peace.
First of all, thank you for having me. The thing is, there's a several of country has a fear about the process or the objective of this peace counseling. A danger for the rule, for the international community and for the human rights. First of all, it's United Nations. This is the rule, a significant rule for United Nations to apply and to investigate about the peace in not only in Gaza, in all the
Ali, I'll request you to stop. We have live visuals of speech from Steve Witkoff. Let's listen that.
Secretary of State to work on something that the world thought was impossible and unattainable. But the president, on this peace deal for Gaza, as on all other deals we work on his behalf, said we had to try. And of course, we were inspired by that. We have achieved a peace deal in Gaza. We have brought the hostages home, all of the bodies except for one, and we will bring that body home too. And maybe most importantly, we have created a sense of hope for what the future can bring in Gaza and all other places where the board of peace will operate. And I am so honored, Mr. President, to have worked on this on your behalf. I'd like to thank some people here who are here with us tonight who have done so much, done indispensable work to bring this deal together. Sheikh Mohammed, my good friend from Qatar, and Ali Al-Tawadi, Hakan, Fidan, and Ibrahim, General Hassan, and Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati, and of course, President Sisi, and Prime Minister Netanyahu, former Special Envoy Ron Dermer, and Michael Eisenberg for all that they did. I would also like to thank our core working group and members of the Board of Peace who have been working nonstop on behalf of this incredible, noble effort, around the clock for months on end, sacrificing time with their families and their own personal lives because they believe in the mission and the vision that the President has set out for us. I'd also like to thank, those people include Tony Blair, Yakir Gabay, Josh Grunbaum, Aryeh Lightstone, Laron Tonkman, Admiral Cooper, General Frank, and I probably have forgotten some along the way. And then perhaps most importantly, I want to thank our administration. We have an incredible team. It's amazing to work for this administration. I think you see the results that we get on behalf of the President because he inspires us so much. So I'd like to thank the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, for all of his help and guidance, our Treasury Secretary, of course, the Secretary of State, who we work hand in glove with, and a special thanks to our Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, who is always available to us for consultation, for steering, and for all else that she does. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And I have to say, one of the great honors for me of being able to work on this has been working with Steve, who really is as brilliant as he is. His heart is tremendous. He's a lot of fun to be with. And even in some of these, very difficult moments where we didn't think things were happening, working together really was an amazing treat. I'm going to go now today just through a couple quick slides just to show you the progress that's been made in the last couple months. It was just over 100 days ago that we got the final deal done, and everyone was celebrating and joyous about the hostages coming home and the end to this long war that nobody thought was possible. And Steve and I were panicking, saying, what do we do next? How do you implement peace? And as you guys know, peace is a different deal than a business deal because you're changing a mindset. And in Israel, there was 2 years of very intense war. For the people in Gaza, there was more than just 2 years of war. They had 20 years of hopelessness being ruled by a terrorist organization. For the people in the Middle East, their hearts were pulled by this. And throughout the entire world, it really was weighing on us. And so we needed to think about, what do we do next? How do we change the habits? How do we change the behaviors? And we really got to work right away. And the team that Steve thanked, including the White House team and the team, the volunteers, it's really been an incredible effort, very entrepreneurial, and we really did it in the way. I've been working now with President Trump for 10 years on politics, and what continues to amaze me is that he always takes a first principles approach and says, what's the most optimal outcome? Aim for that. Whereas politicians are always focused on the downside or what could go wrong or how to make it a little bit better. He always says, aim for the best possible and, do your best to get there. And if everyone thinks it's impossible, that's even more reason why you should aim for it. And so really thank you for the leadership and the inspiration for doing this. And I think you'll see today we've achieved more than thought was possible. And our ambition is still to go for something, I think, better than most people think is possible as well. So let's see if these things work. They never usually work. Good. So quickly, I'll go through this 2-year war, 90,000 tons of munitions. There's over 60 million tons of rubble there and tens of thousands of fatalities. Through the ceasefire, we were able to get to the 20-point plan, ceasefire, release of hostages. Getting the UN resolution passed was a huge, huge effort, really thanks to Mike Waltz and the whole team there. They did an incredible job. And we've then, with the help of the UN, we've worked very, very well with them. This is why you need a new organization like the Board of Peace to work with the UN. I want to thank Tom Fletcher, did an incredible job of really getting it going. We've done historic humanitarian aid. Going forward, number one thing is going to be security. Obviously, we've been working very closely with the Israelis to figure out a way through de-escalation. And the next phase is working with Hamas on demilitarization, which I'll talk about in a second. But without security, nobody's going to make investments. Nobody's going to come, build there. We need investments in order to start giving jobs. We want to take these people. 85% of the aid of Gaza, 85% of the GDP of Gaza has been aid for a long time. That's not sustainable. It doesn't give these people dignity. It doesn't give them hope. And so we want to use free market economy principles, a lot of what President Trump spoke about that he's doing in America.
All right, viewers, those were U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner addressing the Board of Peace. And chalking out a plan for the demilitarization of Gaza. My guests Ali Mohammed Abushbak and Saul Sadka continue to remain with us. Ali, you were speaking on the fact that no Western allies, no Western European allies of the US are in this board of peace. Please do continue with your answer.
Yeah, so most of the Western countries, they are rejecting to join this peace border. They have a several affair that based on the rule about the future of United Nations and about the Security Council for United Nations. If there is a peace border that heading by Donald Trump, by the way, Donald Trump, he's not a peace man. He's just only talkative man and a showman. What he has done in Venezuela, what he has done in several of countries, in Iran, the bombardment during the 12 days of war, and nowadays threatening Iran and threatening several of countries that he's, and about also Greenland. So all of this showing the intent of Donald Trump. So how he could be lead a peace border for in Middle East. This is a they have a several of pretext for their not joining the border, but also in Middle East, several of countries they are welcoming, but most of them they are not a very strong countries or one of the significant countries in international community or a very reliable or actor in international community. Russia showed its intent to support the border, but the port of peace, but up to now it's not clear either they were going to join or not. What about the peace in Gaza? He claimed that he reached to the peace at a ceasefire in October 2024, but up to now we have seen several of Israeli violations on the ground. We have seen several of children have been killed because of the cold, because of Israel's doesn't allow or prohibit it for the Palestinians to reconstruct.
All right, while we try to fix that network connection with Ali, Saul also continues to remain with us. Saul, how would you want to respond to Ali, who was speaking out about how Israel continues to violate the ceasefire in Gaza?
Israel has maintained all its obligations under the ceasefire. Hamas's obligation now is to disarm and hand over all its weapons. We all know that that is never going to happen. They will never hand over their weapons voluntarily. But until that time, no one has any argument against Israel on violating any kind of ceasefire, because Hamas is absolutely in breach of the ceasefire. It hasn't handed over its weapons, it hasn't disarmed, it hasn't handed over any of its jihadi fighters, and it is still holding the body of an Israeli, which it stole more than 2 years ago.
Saul, with Turkey and Qatar on board, what does this board of peace really mean for Israel?
Israel didn't want Turkey and Qatar on board because Turkey and Qatar, certain parts of the administrations in Turkey and Qatar are in favor of Hamas and support them via their allegiance via the Muslim Brotherhood. And yet at the same time, it must be recognized that the deal that was forced on Hamas to hand over the hostages could not have happened without them. It was only when Hamas's backers in Turkey and Qatar realized that their situation with Trump wasn't going to go forward and that their geopolitical position was very weak, as long as Hamas continued to hold the hostages, that they managed to essentially trick Hamas into handing over all but one of the hostages. And that really, at that point, was the end of Hamas as a threat to Israel and of any interest to the world. So they deserve some credit for that, and so having them on the board of peace is probably part of that deal.
All right. Crucial also here to note, as far as this board of peace is concerned, is that of the United Nations Security Council permanent 5 members, except for the US, there's no other on board. How do you think this is going to affect this board of peace, and how do you think its functioning is going to be much different from UN? Although Trump is saying it's not a body that's meant to replace the United Nations, although he did say that UN could not end up resolving the conflicts that he has taken credit for.
Right. It's hard to know what the future holds for it. My guess is that genuinely this is meant, and there are certain people I've spoken to that give me the impression that this is meant as a seedling of something that will grow into a rival to the United Nations, something that's very desperately needed in the world because the United Nations has been hijacked. But the presence of all these countries, there's no question. I mean, you certainly wouldn't want Russia on a board of peace. That would be absurd. They are currently involved in a number of wars in Africa. And of course, they are currently reenacting World War I in the fields of Ukraine in a war of conquest, the likes of which Europe hasn't seen since World War II. And China, you certainly wouldn't want on the board either. They are building up an army and they have plans in the near future wage war on Taiwan, a US ally. So those people don't really belong on any kind of board of peace. And as for France and the United Kingdom, my guess is that they will join in the near future. At the moment, they are not cooperating with Trump because of the ongoing fracas over Greenland. But my guess is they will join in the very near future.
But what gives you the confidence to say that France will join the board of peace eventually?
The current difficulties between the European Union countries, the UK, and the United States revolve around the issue of Greenland. Trump has made it his mission to turn Greenland into a US territory. And most likely the plan there is to pay off Denmark with money, to pay off the Greenlanders with money, and make it a US territory by consent. And he's talking a big game and threatening all sorts of things that he really can't make happen. As a result, there is a certain tension right now between these European nations and the United States. And as a result, that is probably the reason why France and the UK did not agree to join the board of peace. But that is, after all, speculation on my part.
All right. Ali is also back with us in the discussion here. Ali, now Trump is saying that the Gaza board of peace can go beyond Gaza. Where will this board then be limited if it is going to go beyond just the demilitarization of Gaza?
First of all, he couldn't access to peace in Gaza. And maybe he was mentioning about Lebanon and the conflict between Ethiopia and Egypt. But up to now, he couldn't success in stop the killing machine in Gaza. He couldn't stop, or he couldn't success to stop the war as well as in Lebanon. Up to now, not according to me, according to Israeli human rights organization, Beit HaShalom, Beit Salem. There is a several of more than 100,000 Israeli violation in Lebanon and more than 200 Israeli violation in Gaza on the ground. This is according to the Israelis human rights organization. But up to now, Donald Trump is just only living in his will be over. He will still lead the international community and the world. But this is only, in my opinion, a dream. This peace board, it will not success since that there is no reach for peace in Gaza, and there is any solution for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There is no any future for the Palestinian statehood. And there is no any future for the rule of the United Nations in Middle East. If United Nations couldn't success to end the conflict between Gaza and Israel that sparked in 2023, up to now, Donald Trump, he couldn't. He could claim that he returned just only the Israeli hostages. But what about Palestinian? He couldn't stop the Israeli killing machine. He couldn't enter the Palestinian essential items or essential supplies for the Palestinian in Gaza. The desperate Israeli settlement is still up to now. It's like a council in West Bank, and it.
All right, Saul, would you like to respond to some of the points that Ali was raising, our previous guest?
Yes, there's absolutely no question. Israel hasn't got any patience for this kind of nonsense propaganda anymore. Israel is not in any way, they managed to get through 2 years of war with that kind of endless lying and propaganda. And it stood firm and said, no, these people, terrorists, Hamas are going to be eradicated. And that's exactly what happened. And now Hamas is a fraction of what it used to be. Hezbollah is a fraction of what it used to be. The Assad regime is gone. All the terrorists that were arrayed on Israel's border are now either completely gone or nearly gone. And as they try to rearm, Israel will continue attacking them and blasting them to bits. And they are not going to apologize for that in any way. And there will be no peace in the Middle East. There won't be peace for Jews, and there won't be peace for Arabs until such time as the Arabs of the region accept that there is a Jewish polity in their midst, and they have the right to be there, and they will stop trying to eradicate them, as they have done now.
All right, so I'll have to interrupt you there. Donald Trump is speaking. Let's hear him.
An honor to be involved with this and to be involved with the great people in this room and the great leaders that are sitting on stage. We thank you very much. And we have many others that have signed up, and they all want to be members of the Board of Peace because it really will be important. This is not going to be a waste of time. We waste so much time on things that never happen. This will happen, and it's already happening. Thank you very much, everybody. It's a great honor to be with you. Thank you. Thank you.
There, concluding the ceremony at the World Economic Forum of Peace of Board for Gaza's reconstruction. Let's remind you, 19 countries have signed the charter for the Peace of Board for Gaza. 35 were expected or had committed to this Board of Peace, but in attendance in this ceremony were only 19 nations. Qatar, Turkey, Saudi, UAE, Egypt, Belarus are among the countries that had committed to the Board of Peace. In fact, let's take you through the full list of countries that have accepted the invitation. These include Mongolia, Uzbekistan, the UAE, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Paraguay, Pakistan, Kosovo, Kazakhstan, Jordan, Indonesia, Hungary, Bulgaria, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Argentina, Morocco, and Bahrain. Now, Trump has denied that the Board of Peace is meant to replace the United Nations, but he says that it does go beyond Gaza to address global challenges, as some fear that it may be rivaling the United Nations. And once again, taking you through the full list of countries who are in the Board of Peace for Gaza are Egypt, Hungary, Indonesia, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, Morocco, Pakistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, UAE, Uzbekistan, and Vietnam. All right. I'm now joined in by Aharon Levarko. He's an Israeli journalist and he joins us from Netanya in Israel. Thank you very much for joining us in this discussion. What's your first comment on this new Board of Peace and the member countries that are on board and those who committed but did not attend the ceremony?
Well, thank you for having me. Well, there's a sense of optimism. Donald Trump's leadership in doing this, bringing people to the table who, to some degree or another, are committed to moving ahead with peace. That's a huge word, peace, whatever that means. It doesn't mean a cessation of war, doesn't mean disarming these questions. We're going to see the outcome. You know, this task of rebuilding Gaza, you know, just to clean it up is going to take a number of years. So, yeah, there's optimism, there's hope, but then there's another side, and there's concerns. There's concerns of things like, you know, one of Donald Trump's goals in the 20-point plan was the disarmament of Hamas. Number two, the de-radicalization of the area, and these haven't been achieved yet, and that was in phase number one. So when we a couple of months ago when Donald Trump was here in Israel and he struck this deal, there was a mass amount of hope and excitement. But here we are later, and two key points have not yet been reached, and we're already moving on to phase two. So hope, but definitely concerns, and we're going to see it unfold before our eyes. It's very historic. Let's hope for the best.
All right. Aaron, thanks very much for speaking to us. I request you to continue to stay on with us. Viewers, for now, we're going to conclude this edition of the World Report on NewsX World, but do stay tuned as we bring you every minute-by-minute update from the World Economic Forum and from all parts of the world right here on NewsX World.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
Hello and welcome to Deep Dive on NewsX World. I'm Kriti Mehta. We turn now our focus to the first year of US President Donald Trump's second term. The president held a long White House briefing to mark his first year in office. He reviewed his record, highlighted successes, and provided context for his strategic priorities. In his press briefing marking the anniversary, Trump defended his policies on the economy, foreign relations, immigration, and national security. He spoke for well over an hour, describing what he said are policy successes and challenges he has faced. Let's first hear that statement.
It's a big crowd. It's a lot of people. I think it's like a record. So these are accomplishments. We have a lot of accomplishments, and as you know, this is the anniversary, first anniversary, January 20th, and it's been an amazing period of time. We have a book that I'm not going to read to you, but these are the accomplishments of what we've produced. All page after page after page, individual things. I could stand here and read it for a week and we wouldn't be finished. But we've done more than any other administration has done by far in terms of military, in terms of ending wars, in terms of completing wars. Here's the book. These are all things we have. I'm going to read a few of the samples, but look at this. These are all, each line is something that we did. Nobody did that before. And it's big stuff, too. Look, we have the hottest country in the world.
Let's now delve deeper into what the president highlighted about the economy. Trump said that his administration lowered inflation, spurred wage growth and boosted the stock market since he took office. He cited improved economic indicators as a sign of national strength. Fact checkers noted that some claims made during the briefing were not accurate on the underlying data. For example, Trump repeated claims about historically high inflation that have been disputed based on official figures. On foreign policy, Trump pointed to U.S. actions in Iraq, Syria, and coordinated efforts in Gaza as part of his stance on global security. He also reasserted his view that the U.S. has negotiated or helped bring about peace in multiple regions, a claim that fact-checkers say is not clearly supported by ongoing outcomes. The president also spoke forcibly about his relationship with Russia. He said his administration exposed the hypocrisy in a prior Russian policy and maintained a strong sanctions regime. However, critics have noted inconsistencies in rhetoric and actions over the past year. Trump also discussed China, calling it the biggest threat and highlighting his administration's trade negotiations and economic countermeasures. Details remain complex, but his comments were central to his foreign policy narrative. The Greenland issue returned as a major point. He continued to assert U.S. control or influence over Greenland, at times not ruling out military options. His push for greater influence there has drawn responses from European leaders, including questions from France and Denmark about sovereignty and alliance commitments. A crucial point left out was the Federal Reserve. Trump's push for lower interest rates, particularly through 2025, remained a key topic. Even after a federal criminal investigation into Fed Chair Jerome Powell was made public this week, Trump reiterated his call for easing rates to boost growth. The investigation into Powell raises questions about the Federal Reserve's independence, particularly with Trump's monetary policy aligning closely with business interests. Now let's look at the highlights from the past year, major actions and policy moves that defined Trump's first year back in office. Trump ordered a deployment of federal immigration and security forces into U.S. cities as part of his immigration enforcement strategy. He continued to assert U.S. control or influence over Greenland, at times not ruling out military options. The administration demolished the historic East Wing of the White House to make way for a new state ballroom. U.S. special operations captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, according to official statements. Trump pardoned or commuted sentences for those involved in the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack early in his term. He participated in a high-profile diplomatic exchange with Ukraine's president, publicly criticizing Ukrainian leadership's stance on security guarantees. Political investigations were pursued against opponents, including investigations that were later dismissed or challenged in court. Trump instigated sweeping tariffs on foreign nations affecting both allies and global markets. U.S. forces also participated in a military action targeting Iran's nuclear facilities alongside allied operations. His administration limited the release of Jeffrey Epstein investigation files after initial resistance, then signed legislation to make redacted records public. Trump also signed an executive order seeking to change birthright citizenship policy, which remains under judicial review. Trump suspended immigrant visa processing for 75 countries, claiming that immigrants from the countries on the list, including Afghanistan, Brazil, Egypt, and Somalia, take welfare from the American people at unacceptable rates. What does this all mean going forward? Trump has set a course that emphasizes economic and national security policy, often using executive actions and high-profile decisions. His relationships with allies and his posture towards global powers like Russia and China continue to shape his foreign policy outlook. The coming year will test whether these policies yield long-term results or remain controversial points of debate, both domestically and internationally. Joining me now in this discussion is Frederick H. Fleets, who's former U.S. government official serving since 2022 January as Vice Chairman of the America First Policy Institute and the Center for American Security Department. Thank you very much for joining me in this discussion. Let me begin now with my first question. In your opinion, what are some of the most outstanding and unprecedented decisions taken by Trump 2.0 administration? And how are those changing the US geopolitics and international rule of law?
Well, I'm Fred Fleitz, and I served most of my career with the CIA, and I was chief of staff of the Trump National Security Council. And I just listened to this diatribe you just read. It seemed very anti-Trump. Looks like your network really hates Trump. So I don't know where to begin.
No, I'm sorry. I beg to differ here. We've only been reporting
I don't care.
fairly
I don't really care.
And
I'm the guest. Let me answer the question.
no, an
Or I'm just
entire
gonna-
team's
I'm just
research cannot be
Can I answer the
called a
question?
diatribe,
Or-
Mr.
I'm sorry.
Fleitz.
You set up a very biased question.
Well,
Now it's
that's
my
your
turn to
opinion,
answer.
but we are trying
So
to
you
do a
ask the
fair
questions, then I
reportage.
answer.
I asked you a
May I
question.
answer the
I'd
question?
like
May I
you
answer
to
the
answer
question
that
now?
fairly. Yes,
I mean,
please.
I
Of
hear all
course,
this.
that's why
I
we
hear all this
invited you.
chatter in the background. Can I
Please
question?
go on.
Here's what I want to tell you. This has been a very successful president. We know he's controversial, but we also know that his leadership has promoted global security. He's reduced the threat from Iran. He did something daring to stop the fighting in Gaza. He hasn't succeeded yet, but he got all the live hostages out. There's a shaky ceasefire. There's hope for peace. There was no hope for peace under Joe Biden. He's tried very hard to stop the war in Ukraine. He hasn't succeeded yet. But there's dialogue. There's hope to end this conflict. And I hope that China and India will work with the United States to put pressure on Vladimir Putin to start negotiating in good faith. He removed the narco-terrorist president from power in Venezuela who was sending drugs and criminal gangs into our state. That's what your setup to this segment should have included, not this diatribe of things that are completely unrelated. Why is Jeffrey Epstein coming up when Trump's going to Davos? The only reason you would raise that is because you're trying to make our president look as bad as possible.
Let me have you corrected. This is not a discussion on Trump's visit to Davos. This is about his first year in office, in his second term, over which he made an address, and that's what we are discussing. And if you allow me, I'd like to ask my second question to you. Now, the Trump administration has also taken strong actions, including deploying federal forces in US cities and suspending visas for certain countries. How can Trump really balance the national security and civil liberties of both immigrants and citizens, particularly in light of public outcry over these policies?
Well, what President Trump is trying to do is to deal with the consequences of the Biden administration not securing our southern border, which allowed 11 million illegal migrants to come into our country, including hundreds of thousands of so-called got-away migrants who we don't know who they are. And Trump is trying to deal with the situation. In states like Minnesota, which have declared themselves sanctuary cities, we have criminal migrants who are not being turned over to the federal government, who've committed some pretty serious crimes. This has created conflict. Our Department of Homeland Security is trying to deal with this issue. I think it will be dealt with over time, but it is a serious conflict. It is a conflict that was caused by Joe Biden and Democratic politicians in our country.
Sure, Mr. Fleitz. Next, do you think Trump's administration has instigated the tariffs on foreign nations? Do you think those are causing a ripple effect in global markets? And how will these tariffs impact US economy in the long run? And would you say they've effectively addressed the broader issue of international trade imbalances?
Well, Trump is looking for trade that is both free and fair, and he found a system of trade relationships with many nations where the U.S. was at a significant disadvantage, and he's been trying to deal with this issue. He's also trying to bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. I think we both know some of those jobs are never coming back because the economic situation is better in other countries. And the plan that President Trump had for tariffs is obviously changing and evolving. He's negotiating it. I think it was his opening salvo to try to improve America's trade situation. I think we'll see some significant changes in this in 2026.
Sure. Moving ahead, in your view, what are the long-term implications of Trump's foreign policy measures towards Greenland, Venezuela, and other autonomous territories, especially in terms of U.S. global relationships and security?
Well, I mean, Trump is certainly looking at global situations and taking a position that challenges conventional wisdom. Concerning Venezuela, as I said, he removed a dictator who was basically a narco-terrorist leader who was causing real problems for our hemisphere. And basically the reason Trump is taking such an interest in this is because his belief is that this flood of illegal aliens is due to instability in the Western Hemisphere and an erosion of American leadership. Venezuela is at the center of this, and Trump has tried to deal with the situation, but he also does not want to get into a situation similar to what happened after the second Iraq war, when the U.S. engaged in nation building, dismissed the government, dismissed the military. The result was anarchy that led to the rise of ISIS. He's not going to do that in Venezuela. Concerning Greenland, I think this will be solved through negotiations, but it recognizes the reality that little Denmark cannot properly administer and support this giant island, which has significant security implications for the United States.
Sure. Trump's administration has also been effectively promoting the Gaza piece of, board peace that we were discussing, while simultaneously withdrawing the U.S. from 66 United Nations organizations, right? How do you view the impact of these contrasting actions on global diplomacy?
Well, as we discussed a moment ago, the Board of Peace is very interesting because it is set up to deal with the problems of the United Nations. That has been incredibly anti-Israel, has been of no use at all in solving instability and to bring peace to the Middle East. He has his alternate structure. He's trying to bring in China and Russia. He's invited the UK and France. Israel will participate. Hungary will participate. I think it is a pragmatic solution to the reality that the UN has some serious problems. The U.S. has pulled out of a variety of international organizations that the Trump administration feels has not been operating properly or has been biased against the U.S. I don't know what the final decision will be, how many of those U.S. withdrawals will hold, whether there will be more. But I think the Trump administration is looking at all these organizations across the board to see which are appropriate for the U.S. to continue to participate in.
Sure. Mr. Flights, before I let you go for this discussion, one final question. Critics have pointed to inconsistencies in Trump's approach to both Russia and China, where he has imposed sanctions on these countries while maintaining relatively cordial relations with their leaders, Putin and Xi Jinping. How do you reconcile the U.S. stance on Russian aggression and Chinese policies with the president's actions and rhetoric over the past year?
Well, when Biden was president, he really isolated Putin. He called him a war criminal. He likened him to Hamas. And that meant negotiations with Russia were impossible. Trump is trying to deal with the despot leaders of these nations as a deal maker would. It's not that he agrees with their policies or thinks that they are not guilty of war crimes or engaged in gross human rights violations, which I think we both know that they are. But he's trying to find a way to deal with them because that's what statesmen have to do. The U.S. had negotiating and relationships with leaders of the Soviet Union and communist China for decades during the Cold War. We don't have to like them. We don't have to agree with their systems. We have to find a way to get along with them. We have to find a way to negotiate agreements to lower tensions. Otherwise, we have the alternative is isolating these states and looking at the prospect for war. Trump doesn't want that.
All right, sure. We take your points and appreciate you for joining us and for speaking to us, Mr. Flights, here at Deep Dive on NewsX World.
Good to be here.
All right. Viewers, with that, it's a wrap on this episode of Deep Dive. But stay tuned to NewsX World as we bring you all international news and updates right here.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
in the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta. You're watching the World Report on NewsX World. We'll start with a check of the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump has just launched the Gaza Board of Peace with a signing ceremony in Switzerland at Davos. 19 countries have signed the landmark charter. US President Donald Trump steps back from threats to use tariffs or force over Greenland, saying a deal with Denmark is possible. NATO Chief Mark Rutte says Greenland's sovereignty is not discussed with Trump, focusing instead on Arctic security. Denmark's foreign minister says US President Donald Trump has sent positive signals by ruling out military action over Greenland. Trump also says he has a framework deal and drops tariff threats after talks with NATO Chief Mark Rutte. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he will meet US Envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner to discuss the war in Ukraine and frozen Russian assets. US President Donald Trump is also set to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Davos. Syria's government accuses the Kurdish-led SDF of attacks that kill 11 soldiers, but the group disputes the claims and blames at least one blast on Syrian troops. The incidents risk derailing a 4-day ceasefire as Damascus pushes for the SDF to integrate into the state. Rafael Tuaderes, the son-in-law of Venezuelan opposition leader Edmundo Gonzalez, was released from prison earlier today after spending 380 days in detention. His wife, Mariana Gonzalez, said while marking his return home, Tuaderes was detained on January 7, 2025, and his release comes amid broader political shifts in Venezuela. Nigerian forces rescued 62 hostages from the Manhai forests, a hideout linked to bandit leader Kachala Alti, as the UN says insurgency by Boko Haram and ISWAP has killed about 35,000 people. Meanwhile, in a separate operation, 5 soldiers and a police officer were killed in a terrorist ambush. According to Norwegian Development Minister, Jordan and Norway are deepening a strategic partnership that now goes beyond aid to include political alignment, economic cooperation, support for multilateralism, and coordinated positions on Palestine, international law, and UN reform. All right, viewers, on to the top focus story. US President Donald Trump has officially launched the Board of Peace at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Trump signed the founding charter, saying the board's primary goal is to ensure Gaza is demilitarized and rebuilt. The initiative, which could expand beyond Gaza's ceasefire, aims to work closely with the United Nations, but Trump hinted it could take on a broader role in global diplomacy. Let's have a look at some of the crucial statements.
Been very clear that Hamas must return that last remaining deceased hostage as well, and that will be the full commitment. And then we get on to other things, and we're committed to ensuring Gaza is demilitarized, properly governed, and beautifully rebuilt. It's going to be a great plan, and that's where the Board of Peace really started. And I think we can spread out to other things as we succeed with Gaza. We're going to be very successful in Gaza. It's going to be a great thing to watch, and we can do other things. We can do numerous other things. Once this board is completely formed, we can do pretty much whatever we want to do, and we'll do it in conjunction with the United Nations. You know, I've always said the United Nations has got tremendous potential.
Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has expressed a readiness to support the Board of Peace, proposing to send $1 billion from Russia's frozen assets to assist the Palestinian people. Putin also proposed discussions with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas about joining the initiative. Now, joining me in this discussion are Aharon Levarko, who is Israeli journalist, joins us from Netanya in Israel. We also have Andrew Latham, international affairs expert from Minneapolis, and retired Major General Sudhakarji, who is a senior strategic and international affairs expert, joins us from Jaipur in India. So I'll start my first question to retired Major General Sudhakarji. Sudhakarji, that was a very long address given by Donald Trump officiating the Board of Peace for Gaza's reconstruction. How do you assess the inclusion of the 19 countries that signed the charter? Pakistan has joined it. Russia, however, has not joined it as of now, but the developments are coming in about it offering $1 billion to the Palestinian people. A lot of contentions also being raised about the role of the body, some fearing it could rival the UN.
Good evening, Kriti. Thank you for inviting me to your show. Long ago, Victor Hugo, he said that even the largest army in the world cannot stop an idea whose time has come. So despite being at the moment a speculative analyst, all I would say, if the end state objective is positive that Donald Trump is striving for, there is no harm in trying to bring this mindless conflict to an end. So having said that, there are a lot of pitfalls and there are a lot of counter arguments. Does it mean that we continue by sidelining an existing arrangement which is based on the architecture of transatlantic relationship just because one man has decided that it's no good, it's been penetrated by many forces inimical to the interest of the US, nor the global order is moving in the right direction, but it never, if that be the interpretation, it never was. But however, something is better than nothing. So therefore, the counter arguments would always belie the expected end state objective which Donald Trump is looking for. So at the moment, I would say that everything is not going to come out in crystallized form and going to be very assuring for a conflict which has been lingering on since 1947-48, despite all agreements. If there is any hope, glimmer of hope even, to make some viable achievement, at least some beginning has been made, some exchange of the hostages and prisoners have taken place, and Israelis have given some kind of indication to fall back behind the yellow line, and Hamas also have given indication under duress or call it under pressure that they have made some kind of indication and commitment that they would disarm. I have my doubts at the moment, all I would say. Still, I still feel that in 21st century, regardless of means and methods, at least the larger and the end state objective should be pursued in earnest by one and all. There is a lot of positivity and there is a lot of factor of also the achievement which at the moment is biasing any kind of decision towards a positive spiral and peace and normalcy in the Middle East. But at the same time, there are some caveats. Even the groups and the people who are opposing this particular move, I personally feel that a kind of engagement with all the stakeholders is very important because you are ignoring an established kind of an organization that is the United Nations. Therefore, one would do well to actually make it comprehensive, engaging, and give little time to the entire idea to fructify and materialize in the right direction.
All right, Sudhakarji, thank you for your comment. To continue to stay on with me, please. I'd also now like to go to Andrew Latham. Andrew, how would you respond to the fact that Trump has said that this Board of Peace is not meant to replace the United Nations, however, also said that it goes beyond Gaza to address global challenges? Are there any defined limits to the role of this Board of Peace? Because it's unclear from Trump's statements as of now.
I think that's really in the longer term, beyond the Middle East. This is the most significant kind of question. It's clear that to Trump and many of his supporters, the so-called rules-based international order is dying, if not dead. And all of the institutions that were created that constitute that order, the United Nations being the most obvious one in this context, are obsolete and passing from the world stage, and they need replacements. And to Trump's mind, the Security Council is, a UN Security Council is gridlocked, The permanent 5 members have vetoes. They don't represent the majority of people on Earth. There's no Indian veto, for example. It is a product of a bygone era, and something new and more flexible and more capable needs to be put in its place. And that, I think, is his defining vision for this Board of Peace. He genuflects in the direction of the United Nations, but he really has no time for the United Nations. This is meant ultimately to supplant the United Nations Security Council as the place where people go, not to bring deep, lasting peace to address the underlying causes of conflict, but to end the bloodshed quickly, which is his vision. And so it could be quite a monumental, epochal development, in the same way that creating the UN was a big deal in 1945-46. This could be a big deal in 2026, 2027.
All right, sure. To stay on with us, Professor Latham, I also have Aaron Levarko. Aaron, how do you view the fact that Vladimir Putin has agreed for the use of Russian frozen assets for the people of Palestine? We know how much he has resisted European Union's pressure to use those frozen assets for the reconstruction of Ukraine, but here he comes out and says, I'm willing to offer you $1 billion for the people of Palestine, and he wants to make that conversation with the president of Palestine.
Well, Vladimir Putin is a strategist, and number of the people, the nations that joined in with Donald Trump in this bureaucratic meeting, they are either European or from NATO, and so Vladimir Putin has to tread the ground very carefully who he makes alliances with. There's just been a new alliance recently with Pakistan, with Qatar, with Saudi Arabia, with Turkey. We know that Vladimir Putin has dealings with Turkey as well. So he, I think the fact that he's pledged $1 billion for the Palestinian people is showing a hand there that he's behind the rebuilding of Gaza. How much he's behind, we will see. There's got to be some kind of accountability